Hi there, welcome to Comprehensible English Hub. I'm truly excited to be here today to share something that could completely transform your relationship with the English language. Imagine you're having a conversation in English. Someone asks you a question and suddenly your mind starts racing. You hear the English words, mentally translate them into your native language, formulate your answer in your native language, and then translate it back to English before finally speaking. By the time you've gone through this entire process, the conversation has already moved on, leaving you feeling frustrated and disconnected. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. I once had a student named Miguel who would frequently close his eyes during conversations. When I asked him why, he said, "I need to close my eyes to see the words in my language, translate them, and then speak in English." The mental gymnastics were exhausting him, and his conversations felt more like linguistic obstacle courses than meaningful exchanges. But what if I told you there's a way to break free from this translation trap? A way to start thinking directly in English, to have thoughts, feelings, and reactions emerge naturally in English without going through your native language first. This isn't just about speaking faster. It's about experiencing the language as part of who you are. Today, we're going to explore exactly how to make that transition from translating to thinking in English. And as we can see in this visual representation, the difference between these two processes is striking. When you translate, your brain takes a lengthy detour. But when you think directly in English, the path is direct and efficient. I remember the exact moment when I realized I was finally thinking in Spanish, my second language. I was walking down a street in Madrid when I nearly collided with someone. Before I could consciously think about what to say, the words "lo siento," I'm sorry, escaped my lips. I hadn't translated from English. The Spanish response came automatically. That moment of automatic reaction showed me I'd begun to internalize the language. And that's exactly what I want to help you achieve with English today. The science behind this transition is fascinating. When we learn our first language as children, we don't memorize vocabulary lists or grammar rules. We absorb language through meaningful context, through comprehensible input, a term coined by the renowned linguist Stephen Krashen. And this is the key insight. Adults can acquire a second language through the same natural process. But before we dive deeper, let's address a common misconception. Many believe that to think in English, you need to reach an advanced level first. That's simply not true. You can start thinking in English from day one. It's not about how much you know, but how you approach the language. So what exactly happens in your brain when you're translating versus thinking in English? As we can see here, translation involves multiple neural pathways and creates what linguists call cognitive overhead. Your brain is essentially performing double duty, processing two languages simultaneously. In contrast, thinking directly in English creates more streamlined neural pathways, allowing for faster processing and more natural expression. Now let me introduce you to a concept we call the language bubble. Imagine you're inside a bubble where only English exists. Your native language is temporarily outside this bubble. Inside this bubble, you connect directly with English. Words, phrases, and expressions are linked directly to concepts, emotions, and experiences, not to words. In your native language, our breakthrough master is demonstrating this concept visually. Notice how in the translation model, words have to travel a long, convoluted path, whereas in the direct thinking model, the connection is immediate. This isn't just theory. It's neurolinguistic reality. Let me share a surprising fact. Research shows that people who think directly in their second language actually make different decisions than when thinking in their native language. In a famous study from the University of Chicago, researchers found that thinking in your second language leads to more rational, less emotionally biased decision making. So learning to think in English doesn't just improve your fluency, it can actually give you a different perspective on life. Now, let's get practical. I'm going to share 5 powerful techniques that will help you transition from translating to thinking directly in English. These aren't just theoretical concepts. They're actionable strategies that you can implement immediately after our session today. The first technique is what I call English immersion islands. Instead of trying to think in English all the time, which can be overwhelming, create specific time periods, islands in your day, where you commit to thinking only in English. Start with just 5 minutes, then gradually expand to 10, 15, and 30 minutes. During these periods, if you catch yourself translating, gently guide your mind back to direct English thinking. I once worked with a student named Sophie who practiced this technique during her morning coffee routine. Every morning for 15 minutes, she would describe her surroundings, feelings, and plans for the day, all directly in English. Within 3 weeks, she reported that English words started coming to her mind automatically during these sessions without translation. The key was consistency and creating a specific context for this practice. Our breakthrough master is showing us how these English immersion islands might look in your daily schedule. Notice how they're strategically placed at times when you're most alert and receptive to language processing. This isn't about quantity of time. It's about quality and consistency. The second technique is emotion anchoring. One reason we revert to our native language is that it feels more emotionally authentic. To overcome this, we need to create new emotional connections directly with English. Think about a strong emotion, excitement, frustration, joy, and learn to express it naturally in English without translation. Let me give you an example. Think about how you express surprise in your native language. Now, instead of translating that expression, adopt an English expression like, wow, I didn't see that coming, or no way. Practice using these phrases when you're genuinely surprised until they become your automatic response. As we can see here, our breakthrough master is demonstrating how emotions can directly connect to English expressions, bypassing the translation step entirely. This isn't just about memorizing phrases, it's about creating authentic emotional responses in English. The third technique is dream seeding. This might sound a bit unusual, but it's remarkably effective. Before going to sleep, spend 5 minutes reviewing English words, phrases, or conversations. Don't translate them, just experience them in English. This primes your unconscious mind to process English during sleep. Many of my students report that after practicing this technique consistently, they eventually start dreaming in English, a clear sign that the language is becoming internalized. Our breakthrough master is illustrating how this dream seeding process works. The English language material you review before sleep influences your brain's activity during rest, strengthening neural pathways for direct English thinking. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Have you ever noticed that certain activities seem to bypass the translation process naturally? For many people, counting, simple math, or reciting memorized sequences happens directly in their second language once they've practiced enough. We can use this phenomenon with our fourth technique, procedural language patterns. Identify routine activities in your day and create English scripts for them. For example, your morning routine. I'm turning off the alarm, I'm getting out of bed, I'm heading to the bathroom. Practice these scripts until they become automatic. The procedural nature of these activities helps bypass the translation mechanism in your brain. One of my students, a chef named Marco, applied this technique to his cooking process. He would narrate his actions in English while preparing meals. I'm dicing the onions, I'm heating the oil, I'm adding the garlic. After a month, he reported that cooking had become his English thinking time, where words flowed naturally without translation. As our breakthrough master demonstrates, these procedural patterns create direct neural pathways for English expression tied to physical actions, making the language more embodied and natural. The fifth technique, and this is perhaps the most powerful one, is what I call thought streaming. This involves speaking your thoughts out loud in English without planning or translating. Start in private where you feel comfortable making mistakes. The key is to maintain the flow. Don't stop to translate or correct yourself. Just keep the English thoughts flowing. This technique works because it forces your brain to generate English directly under time pressure. It's like linguistic weightlifting. It might feel strenuous at first, but it builds your direct thinking muscles incredibly effectively. I practiced this technique myself when learning Japanese. I would take 10-minute walks where I would narrate everything I observed, thought, and felt directly in Japanese. It felt awkward initially, with lots of pauses and simplified language, but the improvement was remarkable. Within weeks, I noticed Japanese words coming to mind before English ones for everyday observations. Our breakthrough master is showing how thought streaming creates a continuous flow of English directly from your experiences to expression, strengthening the neural pathways for thinking in English. Now, let me ask you something that might challenge your assumptions about language learning. What if I told you that making certain types of mistakes actually indicates progress toward thinking in English? When learners transition from translating to thinking in English, they often make what linguists call intralingual errors. Mistakes that come from applying English patterns incorrectly rather than imposing native language patterns onto English. For example, saying I go to the store shows you're thinking in English patterns, applying the ed past tense rule, rather than translating from your native language. These good mistakes are signs you're beginning to think in the language. Breakthrough Master is illustrating different types of language errors and how they reveal your thinking process. Notice how interlingual errors from translation differ from intralingual errors from thinking in English. This understanding can transform how you view your own mistakes. They're not just errors, they're diagnostic tools that show your progress. Let's try something together right now. I want you to participate in a quick exercise. Think about what you have for breakfast today. But instead of forming a thought in your native language and translating it, try to visualize the meal and describe it directly in English. What did it look like? How did it taste? Was it hot or cold? Try to experience the memory directly through English. How did that feel? If you found yourself reaching for words in your native language, that's completely normal. But with practice, this direct connection between experience and English expression becomes stronger and more natural. Here's something fascinating that happens as you develop this skill. You'll start to notice that certain concepts are actually easier to express in English than in your native language. Every language has what linguists call untranslatable words. Concepts that are captured perfectly in one language but require lengthy explanations in others. For example, the Danish word hygge roughly translates to a feeling of cozy contentment. But that translation doesn't quite capture its full cultural meaning. Similarly, English has words like serendipity or procrastination that may express concepts more precisely than equivalent terms in your language. As you start thinking in English, you gain access to these unique conceptual tools that can actually enrich your thinking. Our breakthrough master is showing how languages offer different conceptual frameworks, different lenses through which to view the world. By thinking directly in English, you're not just communicating more effectively, you're gaining access to new ways of understanding reality. Now, let's address one of the biggest obstacles to thinking in English, the fear of losing connection with your native language identity. Many learners unconsciously resist thinking in English because it feels like a betrayal of their cultural identity. This is a natural concern, but research actually shows the opposite effect. Bilinguals who can think directly in multiple languages report feeling that they have access to multiple perspectives and a richer sense of identity, not a diminished one. Think of languages not as competing systems, but as complementary tools that allow you to express different aspects of yourself. Just as you might use different styles of clothing to express different sides of your personality, languages give you different ways to express your complex, multifaceted identity. Our breakthrough master is demonstrating how thinking in multiple languages doesn't diminish your identity, but rather enriches it, giving you access to multiple cultural frameworks and perspectives. Let's bring everything together with a practical progression plan. A roadmap for your journey from translating to thinking in English. Week 1. Start with 5-minute English immersion islands twice daily. Focus on simple descriptions of what you see, hear, and feel directly in English. Week 2. Introduce emotion, anchoring by practicing expressing one basic emotion directly in English each day. Week 3. Begin dream, seeding with 5 minutes of English review before sleep, focusing on phrases that were meaningful to you during the day. Week 4, implement procedural language patterns for one routine activity, narrating your actions directly in English. Week 5, start practicing thought streaming for 3 to 5 minutes daily, gradually increasing the time as you become more comfortable. Our breakthrough master is illustrating this progression visually, showing how these practices build upon each other to create stronger neural pathways for direct English thinking. Want to emphasize something important. This transition isn't binary. You won't suddenly wake up one day thinking entirely in English. Instead, you'll notice gradual changes. First, certain words or phrases will come to you directly in English, then simple thoughts, eventually more complex ideas. Progress happens in layers, not all at once. The moment you realize you're thinking in English often comes unexpectedly. For many of my students, it happens during an emotional reaction, laughing at a joke without translating it, feeling moved by song lyrics, or responding automatically to a question without that mental detour through their native language. Remember Miguel, who used to close his eyes to translate? 6 months after implementing these techniques, he told me something remarkable. He was watching an English movie and found himself laughing before the subtitles in his native language appeared. That's when he realized he was understanding the English directly without translation. It wasn't just his English that improved. His entire experience of the language had transformed. This journey from translating to thinking in English isn't just about language efficiency. It's about experiencing the world through a new lens. When you think in English, you're not just speaking the language, you're living it. As we can see in our final visualization, the transition from translation to direct thinking represents a profound shift in how you relate to the language. It's a shift from English as an external code to English as an internal voice. Your voice. I'd like to leave you with this thought. Language isn't just a tool for communication. It's a vehicle for experiencing reality. When you learn to think directly in English, you're not just learning to speak more fluently. You're giving yourself access to new ways of understanding the world and expressing who you are. Thank you for joining me today on this exploration of how to stop translating and start thinking in English. Remember, this transition doesn't happen overnight, but with consistent practice of the techniques we've discussed, English immersion islands, emotion anchoring, dream seeding, procedural language patterns, and thought streaming, you'll gradually find English becoming not just a language you speak, but a language you think in, dream in, and live in. I invite you to start today with just 5 minutes of intentional English thinking. Take a small step into that English language bubble we discussed. And the next time you find yourself in an English conversation, instead of closing your eyes to translate like Miguel once did, try opening them wider to fully immerse yourself in the direct English experience. Until next time, keep immersing yourself in meaningful, comprehensible input and watch as English transforms from a subject you study to a reality you inhabit. Thank you.